Alrighty, friends and viewers, welcome back. I know it's been a while, but I didn't forget about you. Come on, don't worry. It just took me a while to get myself collected after the Baltimore Comic-Con, which was the last video I made. So today I figured I would go through and give you my thoughts on attending my first Comic-Con as someone who is working with an artist, and sort of my general thoughts about the show, the things that surprised me, the things that didn't surprise me, and then give you a little mini haul that I picked up, just a few things. Mention some artists that I got a few prints from that I think are really awesome, so maybe you want to check them out. Apologies for the weird lighting. It's been kind of stormy here recently, obviously, hurricane-y and windy and rainy and everything. Maybe it's going to be exactly the same. I don't really have a professional lighting setup, so if it looks the same and I'm apologizing for no reason, cool. If it looks different, sorry about that. So let's move on to the actual matter at hand, Baltimore Comic-Con. So the comic convention was last weekend, September 25th, 26th, and 27th, in the Baltimore Convention Center. And I went down there, like I said in the last video, with my friend Kurt Brugel, who is launching his career, his second career, I guess, as a full-time illustrator, having done it once before in the 90s. And we went down to promote the 3 books that we have right now that are introducing Crom the Barbarian, which is a character that we are repurposing to tell a really cool sword and sorcery adventure. And basically when we were down there, we set up a table in Artist Alley. Kurt had a few prints, a few books, his portfolio, and all kinds of different stuff to sort of show people what the project we're working on is about. The thing is, we didn't really realize, at least I didn't, exactly what Artist Alley is today in modern conventions. So if you've never been to a Comic-Con, or at least the way Baltimore is laid out and the way most of them are laid out, there are basically a few separate sections. There's exhibitors, which are sort of like publishers. You know, IDW was there, different people, Boom Studios, sort of not the DC and Marvels of the world, but different exhibitors will show their books. They'll probably have big-name artists that they bring in who work for them, or writers to sign some stuff. So there's an exhibitors section, and that also will have maybe like Edward James Olmos was here at this one, or this woman from Gotham or Arrow, or I don't know. I didn't watch the show, but you know, celebrities will do signings and different things in that sort of area over there. There's also the main show floor, which is retail space, and that is a mixture of books, like comic books, T-shirts. There was some like big T-shirt things, movie posters, different collectibles, figures, pop vinyls, really popular, or like action figures from the 80s and stuff like that. So that's a large section of the floor. And then to one side, in this case it was in the back, sort of from the entrance in Baltimore, but I've seen it off to, you know, the right or the left as well. There's an area called Artist Alley. And Artist Alley is basically for anybody who wants to buy a table space. In this one, they were selling sort of, one table is about roughly 6 feet of space. You could buy a section of table, anybody could buy a section, and then you can set up your, like your displays, you can sell books, you can, you know, commission, people can come and ask you to draw stuff for them. It's basically just a free-for-all of anybody who is representing themselves as an artist in the comic book world or the sort of geek culture world, to set up and you know, peddle their wares, for lack of a better term, but mostly it's to, you know, connect with fans and sell some stuff and have people get interested in your projects. So I assumed. However, what I have to say about this Comic-Con was that it was actually probably about 50% comic convention and 50% geek culture convention. And what I mean by that is half the people were more like Kurt and myself, who were going there looking for, you know, comic books, who were going there to meet people who were, you know, drawing and creating comics and doing awesome stuff like that. And that was really cool to see. Mostly, I feel like those people were a little older, probably like the 30-ish age and above, something like that. And then the other 50% of the convention is just people who are interested in geek culture but might not have ever even read a comic. It was sort of overwhelming to me how many people came sort of for the cosplay and for the kind of the event of it, but had very, very little interest, it seemed, in in comic books or in buying anything outside of prints. And so what this leads me into is the Artist Alley discussion. So Kurt and mine, Kurt's table really, was one of probably, like I said, about 40% of the tables in Artist Alley that were actually dedicated to people who were physically drawing, drawing there, taking commissions, doing sketches for people, and sort of selling or promoting comic books that they were working on, or graphic novels or whatever. The other 50 or 40% was actually mostly just digital prints. So what I mean by that is like people who make prints off of, Illustrator and Adobe or whatever. They'll just create their own totally digital and digitally colored prints in Photoshop of mostly famous characters, and then they will just sell them for, some amount of, usually between $10 to $15 per print. So the thing about it is that it's very difficult to get somebody to stop and look at your book or notice anything that you're doing when half the people are dressed as Wolverine or dressed as Deadpool or dressed as Harley Quinn or dressed as Batman, and all they want to do is walk around and be like, oh, that's a Deadpool print. I know that character. I want that. Oh, that's a Wolverine poster. I know that character. I want that. So it is a very different atmosphere than I expected in terms of people mostly just being attached to the characters and sort of wanting to live in that geek culture, the geek chic movement that's going on right now, and not so much everybody like I was expecting, or at least an overwhelming majority, going there looking for artists and new books and things like that. So the balance was really different, and I honestly don't know if this is sustainable like this, because there are two things that come to mind. One is that all of this stuff is copyrighted imagery. So, nobody's really cracking down on it now, but everybody around us at Artist Alley is basically selling prints of, like Nightwings and Batmans, like I said, Deadpool, Wolverine. It's all sort of the same popular character, or maybe video game characters. There were a lot of Mass Effect or Dragon Age, or there was a lot of like animation stuff like Bee and Puppycat and Steven Universe and things that I'm not super familiar with, but I know of their existence. But the point is that all of this stuff is copyrighted material, and basically everybody's getting away with making these prints or snagging images of these characters online and repackaging them and selling them as prints, and nobody's really cracking down on it. So I'm wondering if is that coming? Is that coming soon? Where there was an article just on Bleeding Cool or whatever it was that in New York Comic-Con, Marvel or whoever it is might be cracking down on Marvel-based prints and now Star Wars stuff. Because Disney has this like empire of nostalgia now, where they own so much of the characters that people care about at these conventions. So for companies that buy the rights to, let's say, a Princess Leia t-shirt, right? Somebody out there has bought the rights to a Princess Leia t-shirt and is trying to put that image on a t-shirt and sell it. There's 1,000 people who haven't bought the rights who are making prints out of Princess Leia and just selling them to whatever fanboy or girl that's there. So my point is that the people who are paying these licensing fees, I don't understand how they would want this to keep going, where you can just make money off of these characters without any licensing or anything like that. I don't know if it's going to last. It could be that in the next year or so, with this sort of really big boom in Star Wars and stuff, that it's going to get smooshed down, and they're not going to allow so much rampant character appropriation for the prints and for the merchandise that people in Artist Alley are selling. So that was one thing I thought. And then secondly, I talked to a few comic book illustrators that were there, more professional guys, and I asked them, like, do you think that the comic book part of this is going to break off and do its own thing? Like in 5 years, are we going to have separate conventions? In my opinion, it's not unreasonable to think that. In 5 years, maybe there's going to be a cosplay geek culture convention that is one thing, and then there's going to be a comic book convention that is another. For people who really are interested in, the small press books, indie books, digging for comics, sort of separate the two audiences, because these shows are getting huge, which is obviously a moneymaker for the people putting them on. But I don't know that the comic book creators are making a sustainable amount of money and really generating new fans into the comic book ecosystem in a way that will keep them coming to these conventions if they stay, hugely dominated by cosplay and poster selling. I just don't know. It seems like a strange formula that's going on right now. The balance is a little wonky, and I don't know how sustainable it is in the long term. But it was entertaining as hell to see everybody dressed up and really enjoying it. Like, I'm not trying to diminish somebody's enjoyment of any of these characters or these shows or whatever. It's just a different thing than what I expected a Comic-Con to be. And I don't know if that's going to eventually split or if it's just going to, nicely reconcile itself. It seems like there's some tension in it right now. My second thought that I really had to express was I met a few big-name creators, and there was a really interesting dynamic between two of them specifically. So I personally went and got a signature and shook hands and was really excited to meet Bernie Wrightson, who is from, I believe, Maryland, and was in at the Baltimore Convention. He's a little older now. He was wheelchair bound, I think, post surgery of some kind. He wasn't looking like in the best of health, but he was a really, really friendly guy. I've been absolutely head over heels in love with his work. He created Swamp Thing with Len Wein. Had some really famous Batman stories where it's sort of like this super gothic Batman, and Swamp Thing was in some... Ooh, kitty cat. And Swamp Thing was in some of them as well. He is just a masterful, masterful inker. One of the best artists that, in my opinion, from sort of the 70s era DC stuff. But my point being with Bernie is that he was there signing autographs, signing prints at his table. They were selling prints that you could buy for $20 for a print, and he would sign it right there for free. Well, the $20 for the print, but there was no extra signature cost. You could take pictures with him, not really with him because he was sort of behind the table, and like I said, he wasn't like that mobile. But people were snapping pictures of him, him just doing signatures and stuff. I brought some portfolio that I bought from the show, and he signed it like no problem. He was super friendly. I think his wife was there. She was super friendly. There were some pages, original art that he was selling. It was all a really awesome atmosphere. And then across the table from him, sort of across the 2 or 3 tables over, was Neil Adams. And Neil Adams is sort of the exact opposite end of the spectrum, where he peddles his show to every single freaking Comic-Con out there. We saw him at the smallish one, the East Coast last year, and it's the same thing every time. It's this really kind of gross and weird, like, he has all these little signs that are like, $30 for a picture with Neil with your phone, $50 for a picture with Neil with a professional photographer, $10 for him to sign your thing, $30 for him to do this, whatever. And then it's just so different to me, and it's hard to reconcile those two things, where I understand that he has to make money on the convention circuit. I get that, and he's monetizing his image, and people will pay for it. Like, I understand that it's a supply and demand, function, and people are demanding the pictures and the sketches, so why shouldn't he charge for it? I totally get that. But it is a feeling of, to me personally, it doesn't really represent the reverence or the fandom for comic books that I really expected it to. When you go to his booth, all of the prints are sort of like the guy who plays Rick in The Walking Dead, and it's like, Neil Adams sketched him out, so it looks really realistic. Or the Cobblepot character from Gotham, so Neil Adams sketched him out, so it looks really realistic. Or, I don't know, he wasn't there, but Halle Berry, Catwoman, or whatever. It's all stuff from all these other properties that sort of Neil Adams just does, and then he's like, all right, pay me this, whatever, and I'll take a picture with you for $30, and I'll sign it for $10, and blah, 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 blah. It's this weird nickel and diming effect, and I just don't understand how anybody who's their first convention, and you're like 12 or 14 or whatever, and you're like, oh, Neil Adams, and he's like, oh, I'd take a picture with you, Sonny, but that'll be $30. Like, what's that all about? It's just, it doesn't feel right to me. And then on the other side of that, there's a really, really scummy thing going on with the signature business where, like, I was in line for Bernie Wrightson, and he's not charging anything for signatures. And this frickin' guy, probably 6 people ahead of me, brought, I swear to God, a stack of 40 fucking books for this dude in a wheelchair to sign. And he didn't say a word to Bernie. He didn't say anything. He just laid a book down in front of him. Bernie would sign the book. He picked it up, blew on the Sharpie, put it down, put the next one down. And this went on for like 10 minutes. And it was just mind-boggling to me. I don't understand how you could treat somebody or expect somebody to give you that kind of... How could you do that to somebody? You know, this dude who's sitting in a wheelchair, who makes it to however many cons a year, who obviously, like, isn't, you know, whatever. He's not taking commissions. He doesn't do artwork now. And you're just sitting there feeding him book after book after book. He didn't say thank you. He didn't shake his hand. He didn't say anything. Just book, 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 print, print, book, print. And then what? You're going to go and take them to the CGC thing? You're going to get your books slabbed and you're going to sell them for 500% up on eBay because this nice guy was willing to sit there and sign something? Like, don't be that guy at conventions, okay? Don't be that person. If there's somebody there who you respect their work, you want to see them and talk to them, and you think they're awesome, that's cool. Go talk to them. Get a signature. Like, I got, 2 things signed. That's cool, but it's just, don't be that person that is sitting there and making everybody else wait, and, everybody's looking at you and feeling like you're milking this guy who's not charging anything for these signatures, and you're just having him sit there and sign all your shit. Okay? It's fucked up. Don't do that. Please. Don't be a Neil Adams, right? Don't charge children $5 for your photo. That's fucked up. And don't take advantage of people who are trying the opposite, where, they're just basing it on the interactions with the fans. Treat everybody well, these things, okay? Respect the time of the artist or the writer that you're signing. And, there can be a reciprocal relationship where you have an awesome interaction with them and you get a signature and they have a cool interaction. They feel like their fan base is out there for them. You don't have to do this sort of weird, lecherous signatures and blah, blah, blah. Don't do it, okay? No, bad. So I hope that wasn't any more or less rambly than other videos have been. I just wanted to sort of vomit out all the thoughts that I had on the Comic-Con. We had an awesome time with Kurt and myself and Ryan and Brandon, 2 of our other friends. We went down and stayed, only 50 yards away from the convention center. We were able to roll in and out. I didn't even know what to expect, but it was a very, friendly atmosphere. It's very much you just get there in the morning, show up when you want, 30 minutes before the hall's open to everybody. You set up your booth, people roll in, try to talk to as many people as you can. I don't think we set the world on fire in terms of selling any books, but mostly that was because we just had no context for what the hell we were doing. Like, this has really been a great measuring stick for us to see the guy next to us who's been at this for 6 years and has, this many books, and the guy across from us who's put out, 5 books in 3 years. Or it's a very different world kind of pushing yourself along in this indie publishing space than I realized. And it was really, really very, immeasurably helpful for us to talk to these guys and, for me to pick their brains on stuff and how they get it done. And it just gave us a lot of context to understand where we need to be a year from now. So Kurt and I have a pretty clear goal for next year's Baltimore Con, to be exactly 1 year out, to have, 4 books is what we're looking at, to be completed by then. And I think it's really doable, and I think that's really awesome. It's definitely, not going to... That level of output is not going to be sustainably, income-wise for both of us forever, but it is exactly what we need to do at this time to make sure that we are getting where we want to go in the future. It is a building of a brand. It is interacting with people and understanding what they want to look at and what we want to put out. Kurt got an awesome commission from this guy. People like Kurt who are there doing actual sketches and drawings and stuff are going to be making their money at the conventions more on commissions and on sketches, is what we sort of realized. Because You know, pushing the book is cool, and maybe somebody's going to fall in love with your book that had never seen it before, but they could get that book anywhere, really, honestly. Like, they could buy it online from you if they really loved it. They could get it digitally if you have copies of that. You know, the honest truth, I think, is that people are more going to conventions looking for sketches and commission pieces from these artists. And, you know, and we didn't really understand how big of a part that was, you know, going into this. So, you know, there's adjustments to be made, and sort of look at the way that Kurt presented himself, and I, presented myself with him, and how it is perceived and seen. There's definitely places to grow and maneuver, but I thought it was really awesome. We had a few interviews that were really helpful. I can link one of them below, which is on YouTube already, and then the other one's going to be printed, I believe, in the next month. You know, found some people that I think are going to be consistently interested in this stuff. You know, not a huge number, but a number that we can reach out to and get, you know, feedback and have a dialogue with. I thought it was completely awesome in almost every respect. Tiring as hell. I mean, at the end of the day, after sitting there in that booth for so long and sort of talking to people and giving your 30, 40-second spiel over and over and over again, it just was really, really tiring. It was nice to get out and walk the convention floor a little bit, you know, search for some books. There were some really cool vendors, and I think I'm going to split my haul into a separate video because it's a little bit, you know, this is already running kind of long. But, yeah, that's sort of my basic thoughts on this whole thing. I think, you know, I'm super proud of Kurt to be able to have a year's worth of material to bring to this and show people, and, you know, it exists. He's a real person, and it's going to happen, you know, even more in the future. So it was really great. You know, apart from the things that I was talking about, kind of the tensions pulling at the seams of these kind of conventions about Lacan's, the comic version versus the geek culture version versus the cosplay versus everything, you know, what does this want to be and who wants to go to it? Right now it's a little everywhere. So, you know, that's something that's definitely going to take some time for me to understand a little more how the circuit works, and go to more local conventions and kind of connect with people. But for now, I couldn't have asked for a better way to do my first, you know, full weekend convention as an artist, well, writer with an artist. But it was an awesome introduction. I had a great time. I hope you enjoyed this video of my rambling about it. You know, I'm going to be keeping on doing one video a week, still my goal. Keep talking about different comic books, get my name out there a little bit more, and hopefully get some people who watch these YouTube videos interested in the writing that I'm doing. So yeah, look for a lot more from me in the next year. I'm really giving myself the next year to full-time try to do writing and make something happen with, you know, getting stuff published on a very, very small indie scope. Nothing outstandingly large or anything, but really looking to make, ooh, kitty cat, really looking to make a small dent in the indie world, and try to get my name out there, work with some people. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Please like or dislike, depending on your views on my ramblings. Leave me a comment. You know, have you had any awesome convention experiences or anything that really made you, like, kind of like it did for me with some of these guys? So, you know, tell me what your con experience is, or maybe you haven't even been to one and you have questions for me. So let me know. I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good one.